Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
There we go. My name is Jonathan Gomolka, as Mr. Finnegan said, and this is my capstone presentation 2015 entitled Keeping the Story Alive. To start off, I come from a family of Holocaust survivors. Every single one of my family members, grandparents, survived the Holocaust in one way or another, whether that was through escaping to Venezuela or surviving Auschwitz. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And very important to my personal identity, but also to my Jewish identity. Ever since I can remember, my mother has always told me their stories, as well as my father, and explained to me how important it is to keep their stories alive, to tell them to anyone who is willing to listen, because soon we'll be the only ones left to tell it. So fast forward to sophomore year. I was sitting in class in the middle of the year, kind of, and we were studying World War II, and I could have been asleep, I could have not been, and you never really know with me, and my teacher said, we're gonna study the Holocaust, and I got really excited, and it's not like an exciting thing to be like, you shouldn't really be excited about studying the Holocaust, but I felt like I knew a lot about it, I felt like I could add something to the class, and maybe it was a little of like, I didn't have to study, but like, I was really excited, and so first we watched a PowerPoint, we took notes, then we did a couple activities, and then my teacher announced that we were gonna watch 1997's Life is Beautiful. And I was okay with that. I was like, okay, we'll watch it. I've never seen it before. And I left that class extremely disappointed in my education. I found that the film had countless of historical inaccuracies. And I felt like, since we're in history class, why aren't we watching something that's accurate? For example, there's this scene with the main character, and he gets into a Nazi general's office and gets on a loudspeaker and proclaims his love for his wife, who's in a women's camp down the street. And she hears it, she's outside a window, and it all looks so beautiful, and then she touches her heart. And well, that's a beautiful featured film. I didn't really get why we were watching it in history class. I mean, that would not have happened. That's just a fact. I mean, no Jew could have gotten away with that, especially in the middle of the war, without being killed in the process. So I went to my teacher the next day, and I asked if I could possibly add something to the class. I said, could I tell my grandfather's story? And she said, you know, Jonathan, that would be great, but we might not have time. The syllabus is really tight right now. We are running a little behind. And I understood that. That's very understandable. But I indirectly, and I don't blame this teacher, but I felt like Newton North was telling me that I had no voice anymore. And I felt like I had no place now to add something to the conversation. And I was disturbed because, like, we're watching this, and I don't want people to think that the Holocaust is one way when it's the other, when it means so much to me, especially kids that may not know anything about it. So from then on, I stopped telling his story in class and in school. And looking back on that, that upsets me. So now, looking back, at the beginning of this year, I knew I wanted to do capstone. And ever since freshman year, I saw these seniors doing it, and I was like, I want to do something like that. I want to make my last kind of couple months memorable and meaningful to me. And I knew I wanted to do something about the Holocaust, because it means so much to me, but what do I do? Well, my grandfather is 93 years old, he's not a spring chicken, and he has never told his story on camera. He said no to Spielberg, to the Shoah Foundation, because he felt like he wasn't ready, and which is fine, but I knew that I wanted to have children one day, and my grandfather meant so much to me, and he made a lot of opportunities possible for me, not only financially, but he's always been there for me, and I want my kids to know where their opportunities came from. And I wanted them to experience firsthand his story, not just through me, but from himself directly. So I knew that I wanted to document his story. But now, what is the best way to document the story, but also to impact people in the process? When you tell a story, you don't just say it and then no one cares. When you are passionate about something, you want to impact them, and then hopefully they tell it again. It's just like a joke when you want that validation of if you're telling a joke and then they think it's funny and then they're gonna tell it, where'd you get that joke from? That person. So, it's true, it's true. So, But now, how do I do this? Well, I thought, well, let's go back to sophomore year. If I took the visual aspects of featured films, of Hollywoodized films, and that visual of like allowing it to be like empathetic, so when you see it, then you really feel something, that cinematic quality, but also with a textbook quality and a true story like an interview. What would that be? And of course, that's documentary film. So I decided I knew I wanted to research that. And I found something really profound and I fell in love with, which is observational cinema. Now, observational cinema is placing the viewer in the role of an observer, a witness of events. Now, that kind of seems nuanced and a little annoying. So what is that? It's taking a step back with your camera and looking into reality and finding the truest sense of that. It's when you're like interviewing, let's say I'm interviewing you, I'm not going to put a nice white background in back of you, nice uplighting, and then talking to you with a script, because that's not natural. That's not observing the real thing. You want to follow them around. You want to be an outsider and find the stories in the most honest moments. And that's what I wanted to do with my grandfather, or at least attempt to do that. And I knew that I didn't have the tools to really make a documentary. I mean, I don't have the time. I didn't have I'm not a film person, but I knew I wanted to incorporate observational cinema and those documentary themes within my interview, within my videotapes of my interviews. So I realized that there were 4 steps to documentary filmmaking to kind of narrow in how I was going to deal with this process. And that's the interview, image, sound, and editing. And I found that when all 4 are seamlessly put together, then true cinema magic is made. So I'm going to break it down, why they're all so important. The interview. Now, as I said, it's really important to have the interview because not only you want it to be honest and that whole mumbo jumbo, but it's important because that is your meat of your piece, and you can't have a documentary without an interview. That's just a fact. And that's pretty much that. With images, it's really important that you include images because that basic saying, seeing is believing. It's true, like if I said I had hazel eyes and I closed my eyes and you all had a picture of my face, which would be great, but if you all had a picture of my face and you saw on your paper that I had hazel eyes, you'd believe it, right? Yeah. No, but I would, so like if someone said you have blue eyes, okay, whatever. So seeing really is believing, and especially when you're dealing with a documentary. This is a really great quote by Kevin Macdonald. As a storyteller, you want to impact your audience and show them how terrible this event was. If you want people to feel that someone is really to blame, you need to show them what they are to blame for. So especially dealing with the Holocaust and with the genocide, I knew that I had to not only show pictures of happiness, and I mean, like, this is a great example, the survivor from Buchenwald. He's beautiful, he is smiling, he's liberated, and it's a beautiful image, but it doesn't really show you what actually happened. I mean, it shows you the good side, but when you're dealing with a documentary, you want to show the meat, and you want to show them what they are to blame for. So you have to include scary pictures that you don't always want to face in real life. You need to show them dead bodies. You have to show them the gas chambers to put a face to the name. So then third is sound. Now, sound is something that is a little iffy on some people from documentary film. A lot of older filmmakers believe that sound, specifically music, has no place in documentary film because they believe that it kind of makes it like thinks for you, and like if you listen to sound music along with like a sad-ish interview, it makes you feel something that the documentary without it should already make you feel. But I absolutely disagree. Ken Loganoto said, "I think the sound is the heartbeat of the film. If the sound isn't good, then the film is thin. You know, the sound is where you get the emotion of the film." I come from a musical theater background. I'm going to school for musical theater next year, and music is an extremely important part of my life, and I feel like it does something that's indescribable and adds something that is not only profound but impactful, and that's the goal of a documentary film, to really impact your audience, and I think that it's an asset, it doesn't take away. And lastly, editing. Editing is something really scary for a filmmaker after you are with your subject for so long and you're so invested. It really becomes your story too. There's a great article by David McDougall called "Whose Story Is It?" Everyone should check it out. It's about how when you are with your subject for so long, your story is synonymous to theirs, and then it's your job to then bring it forward, and it equally becomes as important as your subject. And it's really difficult because when you send off something, let's say a filmmaker found a story that they loved, and they felt a really great connection to, but it doesn't really enhance the film, and it doesn't really connect to the big themes of the documentary. And it's an editor's job to simplify it and to make it more accessible to its audience. So editing is extremely important. So it was my time to put what I learned into action on that very plane. I went to Florida. I think it's really cute. And so I went to Florida, and I decided not only to interview my grandfather, but to challenge myself and interview 3 other survivors. I interviewed Francis Coppell, my grandfather, Joe, and Etta. And I learned so much from the experience. My first interview was Francis, and I stuck to my script. I wrote out everything that I was going to ask. I was really nervous. I had a lot of technical difficulties with the camera. It was bad. But I found some really great moments, and I'm really proud of it. But I really wasn't an observational cinematic filmmaker. And after leaving her little, what's it called, a little condo in Florida, I realized that I didn't really do a great job. So when I went to Joe's, who was the second interview that I had, I tried to leave the paper down and ask questions that motivated the story and added to it. And I found things that I wouldn't have thought. And I think it really made a huge difference. Now I'm going to show you a clip from my grandfather's piece. It's about my Uncle Sherman, and it's the actual closing to the documentary-inspired interview.
But speak to Jonathan. He's right here. What advice do you have for him? He's going out into the world. He's going to college. What should he do?
It's a hard drive.
Do you remember who he is?
He knows where. I just saw the email. My heart's cried for Sherman's kids.
Well, talk to Jonathan. Jonathan's right here. Talk to grandson.
Sherman, my son, the old one. He married a woman. And the day he got married, his father, his sister, his brother, he wouldn't come to the funeral to his brother. She didn't want to let him go. To the mother, he had to come to the funeral and run away like that to the funeral. And I said to him, let him afford it, I gave him $2,000 for the, let him not think he paid for the car coming to the funeral. You know. And the kids got married, you know. The boy married Christian, you know, and the girl married. And here, our family, over 300 people died. For what? I mean, that, hey, I don't know how I live. I follow certain times, and I think they have me. Ah, God.
So I thought that that piece brought in all four aspects of what I thought was the most important parts of documentary film. I thought that the interview was honest. He forgot that the camera was there. He forgot about that unnatural thing about an interview about a camera in front of your face. I thought that the image of the end, it was hopeful, inspiring. That's a great way to end a movie. I thought that the sound added. I thought it made you feel something a little bit more than it would have without it. And I felt that it all was edited, but I think as best as I could, seamlessly. And I think that that is what documentary film is all about, impacting you, and I hope that that impacted you today. So in my final thought, perfect, it worked. Never works. I want to fix the facade of reality within the classroom. I think that it would be great if we added more documentary films into the classroom because I think they give a truer sense of reality. And I think when you're in a history class, you're there to learn and you're there to be given the facts. And I don't think as high school students, we are mature enough, most of us are not mature enough to understand that featured films are not only there to show that like this is what happened and bring it to the mainstream, which I think that's great, but it's also there to be a spectacle. It's there to get awards and be acclaimed and make money. And that's the truth. They wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't. And that can be argued. I actually kind of disagree with that. I think art is something that can be free, but, sorry. But I want to see more documentary films within the classroom and not challenged to take away all these featured films, because I think they do add something, but I think it's important for a teacher to say that and to say this might not have happened, but this is a nice picture, this is a nice visual for all of you to understand. But without that, I think it gets all muddled. And it's truly an inauthentic interpretation of history that I don't think is needed in the classroom. Now, today, this is something that I added last minute, but this morning I woke up and I got a notice on my phone, and so I posted my interviews, my edited interviews on YouTube and in order to put them on my website. And somebody commented anonymously a really important thing. They said, in all caps, Anne Frank's diary is just a hoax, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And threw me off. I mean, this was my presentation today, and that's why it's important to keep the story alive. We are here, you witnessed this. It's now all of our responsibility to keep it alive, to tell it to whoever is willing to listen, because it truly is so important, and we can't let history repeat itself. Thank you so much. Please visit my website, www.keepingthestoryalive.weebly.com, to watch my full interviews. Thank you.